So today I'm going to recap a little bit of the Yokohama WTCS race that happened on the weekend, as well as the Llanelli race that I did over the weekend, and why swimming may or may not be important in the grand scheme of things when it comes to racing a triathlon.
You got me waiting, my desire. Keep on moving to the purpose now, to the ending of the ocean. Keep on moving.
If you're new here, my name is Josh Lewis and I'm an architect turned professional triathlete. On the channel I'm trying to give you a little bit of an insight into who I am, what I do on a day-to-day basis, and how full-time professional triathletes train and race. If anything I say or do is of interest, do hit the subscribe button below and hit that like button because it helps the channel grow and gives me a bit of affirmation. So thanks, and I hope you enjoy.
You got me waiting, my desire. Keep on moving to the
I'm going to use Hayden as an example here because what he did was quite unbelievable. And in comparison to myself, who also unbelievable but in a completely different manner. So essentially, Hayden came out of the water in Yokohama in probably the bottom 10 people, 47 seconds down on the lead group, or at least the leader. Whereas I came into the end of the swim within the top 10 spaces. And the difference being, Hayden managed to ride all the way to the front of the race, whereas I pretty much went backwards. So in draft legal triathlon, it's important to get to the front of the race whenever that may be, to give yourself a chance of actually winning it. Whether that's in the swim, the bike, or the run, doesn't really matter as long as you're there towards the end of the race or at the end of the race. So obviously, the ideal thing to happen is for you to swim really well, bike really well, run really well, all at the front of the race. So if you've got a good swim like Vincent Louis or Henry Schumann, it's really not easy, but it's a lot more beneficial and easier to be at the front of the race than it is for someone like Hayden. Whereas Hayden has to work really hard on the bike to get back into the race, and if there's some really fast people on the bike who are also good swimmers, he might not get back in. But that's not what happened in Yokohama. In Yokohama, he drilled the bike so hard that he managed to drop the group that he was originally in and train it all the way to the front within about 10-15 minutes. It was an Olympic distance race, so he had a little bit more time. In contrast to me, I was in the top 10 spaces going onto the bike, and I think what happened for me is that I just spent too much energy in the swim, for one reason or another. I just overswam it a little bit too much. I didn't then have any energy when it got to the bike. So I was going backwards through the packs, and I ended up in a decent sized group. It was the chase pack just off the front of the front group. I did make the front group, just. When I say make, I consider making it actually to be you've made it and you've stuck in the pack for a decent amount of time. I just made contact with the back of the group and then got pinged off again around a dead turn. Because if you're at the back of the group going into a dead turn, you have to work so much harder coming out of it to stay within the group. So I did and I didn't make contact, or didn't make the front group. Alas, I was in the chase pack getting slammed essentially. I was so tired. So I think the difference there between Hayden and I is that Hayden probably didn't overswim it, still came out a little bit too far down, but was then able to use his bike ability, which must be phenomenal. Like, to be able to ride that hard for 10-15 minutes at that standard of racing, and then be able to recover within the group for the next 20 minutes or 30 minutes or so, that's mad. Like, that is so impressive, because he not only did that, because he then went on to run 29 minutes off of the bike. I only ran 16:40 something off of the bike. I think my legs just never recovered from that swim and the dead turns. So there's a monumental difference between how we both got to the front of the race, or how I was at roughly the front of the race but wasn't able to stick there. And I think the big takeaway from me is, like, you should be a good swimmer, because if you're not a good swimmer, you can risk losing the race in the swim itself. But at the same time, if you're not a good enough swim biker, then you could be pushed out of the race anyway. I should have been able to stick in the group and recover and ride better than I did. I'm still yet to debunk that, but either way, it's something for me to work on for next time. As for Hayden, obviously he's got massive gains to be made in the swim, but when he does, I think he's truly going to be unstoppable, because he was able to run that fast with Alex at the end of that triathlon, despite having to work so hard on that bike.
Baby, we're safe and sound. You got me waiting, I'm on fire. You got me waiting, my desire.
Let me know what you think in the comments below. How can I improve my race from a swim bike perspective? What was it that caused me to tie up in the swim, despite knowing that I'm in equal ability to some of the guys that came out in and around me, and not be able to ride my bike? And how can Hayden improve his swim? Yeah, comment below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.